Listen. Can you hear it? Listen a little closer. That is the sound of the earth. For as long as our species has existed, the earth has been talking 24/7, 365 days a year. Beneath every city, every prayer, every forgotten civilization, the planet has been humming, not metaphorically, but electrically. An almost inaudible pulse circling the globe about 8 times every second. Scientists call it the Schumann Resonance, a set of low-frequency electromagnetic tones trapped between the surface of the Earth and the charred shell of the ionosphere, high above us. To some, it is nothing more than a curious feature of atmospheric physics. To others, it is the heartbeat of the Earth, resonating with human brainwaves and even the evolution of consciousness itself. In this video, we're going to step into that space between ground and sky, where the measurable and the mystical collide, and listen to what this planetary rhythm might be trying to tell us about matter, mind, and the strange fact of being alive right now. This story begins with thunderstorms. At any given moment, thousands of storms flash across the planet, launching around 50 lightning strikes every second. Each stroke sends a burst of electromagnetic energy racing around the globe. The region between the ground and the ionosphere acts like a vast spherical waveguide, a hollow shell where only certain very low frequencies can survive the journey around the world. Inside that shell, some waves line up with themselves perfectly, forming perfect standing waves, like a guitar string that finds its natural note. These are the Schumann Resonances, spectral peaks in Earth's electromagnetic background at about 7.83 Hz, and at higher harmonics near 14, 20, 27, and 33 Hz. At the surface, these fields are incredibly weak, tiny ripples riding on top of Earth's much stronger static magnetic field, yet they are persistent, global, and have been there for as long as lightning has been striking this world. The existence of these resonances was predicted mathematically by physicist Winifred Otto Schumann in the early 1950s, and reliably measured in the following decade as instruments sensitive enough to listen to the Earth's lowest notes were developed. Measuring them is not a matter of holding a phone up to the sky. Researchers install large induction coil magnetometers, thousands of turns of wire wound around a core, to detect minute changes in the planet's magnetic field, along with electric antennae that sample the vertical electric field in the 3 to 60 Hz band. The raw signals themselves are not dramatic to the naked eye. They are noisy, weak fluctuations. But when processed using spectral analysis, fast Fourier transformers, and related methods, the Schumann peaks emerge as distinct lines in the frequency domain, standing out in front of the background. On spectrograms, these resonances appear as horizontal bands hovering around those characteristic frequencies, their brightness waxing and waning as lightning activity and ionospheric conditions change. Today, there are networks of these stations, university observatories, geomagnetic labs, and independent sites. They record this activity continuously, some streaming it live plots of the planet's low-frequency mood for anyone curious enough to look, like me. And if you look at these recordings over hours, days, and months, a clear pattern emerges. The Schumann bands are not perfectly stable. They broaden, shift slightly, and vary in intensity. Part of this is simple weather on a global scale. As thunderstorm centers migrate between continents and seasons, the distribution of lightning that drives the resonance shifts, modulating their power. Part of it comes from above. Solar flares and geomagnetic storms disturb the ionosphere, changing its height and conductivity. Those changes alter the shape of the Earth ionosphere cavity, nudging the resonance frequencies and how sharply they are defined. Online, these variations have inspired claims that Earth's frequency has suddenly jumped from 7.83 Hz to a much higher values, signaling some kind of planetary awakening or dimensional shift. In the data though, the fundamental mode is still clusters near its expected value. What moves more dramatically are amplitude and structure, not a permanent shift into a new base node. Yet, even within this grounded geophysical picture, there is something intuitively unsettling. The idea that the planet's most basic electromagnetic rhythm can swell, distort, and flicker in response to storms, solar fire, and perhaps longer climate cycles. The bridge to consciousness, it begins with a coincidence. or perhaps a clue. The fundamental Schumann mode at around 7.8 Hz sits in the neighborhood of the border between theta and alpha brainwaves. These are frequency ranges associated with drowsiness, meditation, creativity, and a light trance. For some researchers and practitioners, this overlap is more than a curiosity. Experiments and commercial technologies have used pulsed electromagnetic fields at or near Schumann frequencies, and they claim benefits for sleep, recovery, and mood. There's even some studies that suggest that exposure to 7.83 Hz fields may influence stress markers or subjective well-being, though the evidence is still preliminary and mechanisms remain debated. When you look into this, the broader hypothesis is evolutionary. For hundreds of millions of years, any nervous system on or near the surface of the Earth has existed within the low-frequency electromagnetic field background. Over such timescales, it is plausible that biological rhythms, including those in the brain and cardiovascular system, have tuned themselves at least partially to the environment spectrum around them. And from here, speculation widens. Some propose that when human brainwaves synchronize with the Schumann frequencies, states of calm, coherence, or even heightened intuition may be more accessible, that the planetary field can act as a kind of carrier for subtle aspects of consciousness. And at the same time, there is no consensus in mainstream science that Schumann resonances encode thoughts, transmit information, or determine mental states in any strict causal way. The fields themselves are weak, and the brain is immersed in many overlapping electromagnetic influences. The Schumann resonance may be more like a faint metronome in the room than a commanding voice. But outside of the lab, however, the Schumann resonance has taken on a different life. In spiritual and esoteric communities, it is often described as Earth's heartbeat, a carrier of subtle energies, and a key to understanding the collective psyche of humanity. Guided meditations and sound healing practice use tones tuned to 7.83 Hz, inviting participants to entrain with the planet. People report deeper stillness, vivid dreams, or a heightened state of connection, experiences that are then woven into narratives of planetary awakening and ascension. And if you go online, there are discussions sometimes interpret spikes or whiteouts in the Schumann spectrograms as evidence of surges in global consciousness, moments when emotions, thoughts, or spiritual energies intensify across large portions of the population. In this symbolic reading, the resonance becomes a barometer for unseen changes in the human field. Traditional esoteric currents never used the term Schumann resonance, but they were preoccupied with a similar intuition that the human being is a microcosm nested within a macrocosm, and that subtle atmospheres, astral, etheric, noetic, bind individual minds into a larger living whole. In that light, the discovery of an actual planetary electromagnetic background that overlaps with the frequencies of our own brainwaves feels less like a full explanation and more like a symbol. A physical rhyme that echoes an ancient metaphysical suspicion that thought is not entirely private and that consciousness may be, in some sense, planetary. So, what is the Schumann resonance really? On one level, it is straightforward. Standing electromagnetic waves in the shell of air and plasma, fueled by lightning and shaped by the sun. A quiet, measurable phenomena, described by equations and tracked on the screens of observatories around the world. But on another level, it has become a mirror, a way for us to project our questions about consciousness, connection, and meaning onto the very fabric of the planet. Whether or not these resonances play a decisive role in our inner lives, they remind us that every thought we have emerges inside a larger, vibrating context. Perhaps, in the end, that is the most unsettling idea, that the mind is not an isolated flame, but a pattern flickering within a vast electromagnetic weather system, a small harmony inside a much older song. The Earth has been ringing like this for longer than our species has existed. The resonance is there, whether we pay attention to it or not. The question is not only what these frequencies do to us, but what kind of beings we become when we remember that we are, quite literally, thinking inside a living, humming world.